Andrew McCART, IFL TV, in association with MTK Global. I'm here in Belfast ahead of Mick Conlan versus Diego Ruiz. With me I've got Hall of Fame promoter Bob Arum. How are you, Bob?
Good, very good, very good.
Good. It's good to see you. Like I said off camera, I was in Dallas last week for the Ramirez Hooker fight. Unfortunately, with all the stuff going around with Eddie Hearn and his fight with Dillian Whyte, I didn't get the opportunity to speak with you, so now I have. So I'm going to go back last week and just get your thoughts on the whole Ramirez Hooker fight. What was your thoughts?
Well, Jose is one of my favorites. We've promoted all of his fights from the time he turned pro, and he was a good fighter when we signed him. He was a U.S. Olympian, but he's now really improved tremendously with experience and with the tutelage of Roberto Garcia. I mean, he's become a complete fighter. He fought a brilliant fight against a very, very good fighter in Maurice Hooker, but his game plan was tremendous and resulted in knocking Hooker out in the 6th round.
In your opinion, obviously he's your fighter, so it might be a little bit of a biased opinion, but is Ramirez the more in the division in front of Regis Prograis and Josh Taylor?
Well, I know Prograis, and Prograis is a very good fighter, but I think Ramirez handles him. Josh Taylor, I'm really not up to. I mean, I don't. Everybody says how good he is, but I haven't seen that much of him to make an assessment. So let's see first how he does against Prograis, and then we can determine whether we go into an immediate unification of all 4 belts.
Like I said, I was out in Dallas. I got a good 8 to 10 minutes at the press conference after Hooker's press conference. So you and Eddie going back and forth, reference the franchise champion, Dillian Whyte situation. How do you find Eddie Hearn? Do you enjoy that back and forth with Eddie?
Yeah, I mean, you have to understand that I'm an old guy, and so Eddie's father, Barry, and I go back a long, long way, and we always hit it off very, very well. And so I've known Eddie since he's been a little kid, and I'm close with the family, but I kid him a lot. And
slag off.
Slag him. Oh yeah, and Eddie doesn't have the experience yet to deal with an old wizened guy like myself.
Well, he seems to have a lot of respect for you, because Eddie here, he's sort of like, he gives as good as he gets, but with you, he's sort of like, he's quite reserved. He's like, okay, Bob, so you can see that he's got a lot of respect for you, which is good to see. Can I touch on the franchise champion and your thoughts on that? Because it was quite interesting when a lot of folk aren't happy with the franchise tag on certain fighters because it means they don't face the mandatory, but you're different. You're happy with the franchise tag, aren't you?
As long as the franchise tag is used very carefully. I mean, for a fighter like Canelo Alvarez, yes, and we'll see for whomever else there is. One thing you can't do with a guy who really achieves elite status is burden him with mandatories, generally guys who are just also ran. Particularly now when there are 4 champions with 4 organizations. Then when you go down a little deeper, you get terrible mismatches. And to force a champion into wasting his time with mismatches is not really good for the sport.
We've seen that he's been stripped of his IBF title now, Canelo.
Yeah.
Who was it? Lomachenko?
Yeah.
So he's been stripped of his IBF.
Well, again, and I'm not criticizing the IBF because they follow their rules, but that doesn't mean that the rules are good for the sport. You have Lomachenko, who lost when he fought Jacobs. Then you have Canelo beating Jacobs, and now suddenly Lomachenko again becomes a mandatory, and you say unless you fight him, you're going to lose your title. And the answer is why? Mm-hmm. Why? I mean, he lost to Jacobs. You beat Jacobs. I mean, give us somebody else to fight, or stay away and let us choose who the best opponent is, that seems to me the better course. Now, when a lot of these organizations, unlike the IBF, had discretion, they abused it by, making wacky guys number one contenders. So it's a system that has to be revamped. But meanwhile, awarding a franchise tag to Canelo, I thought was good, because at least as far as the WBC is concerned, it relieves him from fighting meaningless mandatories.
Is Canelo the only fighter you can see as a franchise champion? Because there's sort of talk with Deontay Wilder becoming one, and even Lomachenko's been mentioned as well.
If Lomachenko beats Campbell, he will have 3 title belts. And then his next fight was scheduled to be against the IBF champion, whether it's Comey or Teofimo Lopez. If he then has unified champions with 4 belts, by all means he should be a franchise champion, not fight meaningless mandatories. I mean, Lomachenko, in my opinion, is one of the greatest fighters of our time. And why would you want him to waste his time fighting mandatories who are not competitive? I mean, for example, I was forced to put on a fight for him against this English guy, Crowler. Now, Crowler's a good fighter, but doesn't belong in the same ring as Lomachenko.
Well, I think when you explain like that, you can see sort of your logic, but does Deontay Wilder deserve that tag?
Not yet. If Deontay Wilder is able to beat Tyson Fury, which I don't believe will happen, but if he beats Tyson Fury and then he goes on and wins another belt, then he should be a franchise champion, just the way Lomachenko should be, if he does all of those things, to be a franchise champion.
Well, let's talk about it. It's a month away, Lomachenko versus Campbell fight. A lot of folk on this side, maybe this media guy beside me, Sheldon, he might think the same. A lot of people over in Britain and the UK are like, do you think Campbell has a shot? Do you believe?
Well, you have to understand where I'm coming from. I really believe that Lomachenko is the greatest fighter since Muhammad Ali, the early Muhammad Ali. So no matter how good an opponent he faces, I have to side with Lomachenko. That being said, Luke Campbell is a very accomplished fighter. You don't win an Olympic gold medal, particularly if you don't come from Eastern Europe, without being an excellent fighter. So he has a tremendous amount of skill. I think it'll be a great, great fight. But, from my aspect, there's one winner, and that's Lomachenko. But, certainly Campbell is qualified to fight Lomachenko. I mean, he's a terrific fighter.
Out in Dallas, like I said, I was out there with you. I saw somewhere that you were voicing some concerns with Lomachenko coming to fight in the UK, just because of all the Dillian Whyte stuff that was going on with the British Boxing Board of Control and UCAD and stuff like that. You still have them concerns a week later?
Well, yeah. If put aside for the moment the drug testing, the Rivas people, and I know them very well. Yvan Michel is promoted, a French-Canadian fellow. They claim that it was an approval of gloves, and at the last minute the gloves were switched, and the Rivas camp did not have the opportunity to inspect White's gloves. Well, that's wrong. That's no good. And I watched that fight. The referee who handled that last round ought to be suspended. I mean, he was stepping in at every opportunity to prevent Rivas from finishing off White. and that's wrong. That's really bad sportsmanship, and Homer tactics, where we in the United States always warned fighters when they went to Germany years ago that used to happen. But for it to happen in the UK is shocking, really shocking. And then what they did with the drug testing, when there was a sample dirty, and then they had a hearing, and they allowed him to fight. Well, why you have to have the other side in there? I mean, you have to let the other side know what the situation is, and then give the other side the opportunity to go ahead with the fight or decline the fight. I mean, not to do that is egregious.
The whole drug thing is like, we've only got one side of the story so far, and that was the BoxNation article that came out, and a lot of people have jumped on it. We've still not heard from Whyte yet, and his team referenced this and the hearing and stuff like that. Why do you think there was a hearing involved in? He was passed on a UCAD. Was his A sample come back dirty, and why would the board allow that?
Well, they never got the B sample. Now, if the B sample shows differently, then maybe that overrides the A sample. But they hadn't even examined the B sample at the time they held the hearing. Now, what they held a hearing about, I don't know, particularly without the other side being present. That's really obscene. Now, it may very well be that there was a mistake in the testing and all of that stuff. If that's the case, okay, but let the other side know what's happening.
What's your thoughts on how to govern this? I mean, there's so many different organisations, WADA, UCAD, WADA, and all this sort of stuff. Do you think there should just be one universal governing body to do the drug testing and the sanctions and stuff like that?
All I say is it's not rocket science. You have follow rules. If a fighter tests dirty with the A sample, you don't let the fight go on unless you test the B sample and you find that it was a mistake when they tested the A sample, which can happen. But with a dirty A sample and without knowing anything else, you don't let the fight go on. I mean, it's just, I would believe that the commissions in the United States wouldn't have allowed it. And I know for sure when it happened with Eric Morales, when he tested positive, and his excuse was, well, they eat meat in Mexico, and the cattle consume that drug.
We've heard that story before.
Right.
Yeah.
And they held a hearing in New York before the fight, but they allowed, and they had Morales' opponent, Danny Garcia, and his trainer at the hearing, and they elected to go ahead. And, okay, that's okay, I think. Sometimes it's so inadvertent that you may allow the fight to go on, but you don't have the hearing in the absence of the other side.
What would you have done in Eddie Hearn's shoes if, obviously, Eddie wasn't at the hearing, but he got the all clear for Dillian to fight, so he went, let's go ahead with the fight, but he never let the team, Rivas' team, know. But would you have let the opposite side know?
Absolutely, I would, because I would know that I was inviting criticism if I didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like two sides are in a litigation, and the lawyer for one side visits with the judge without the other side.
Oh, yeah.
The alarm bells go off. That's why you have the rule, in effect, that both sides have to be present when an argument is made.
What to ask then? Should we talk about why we're here? McCartney?
Yeah,
let's do it. We're in Belfast, we're in Ireland. Obviously, it's huge weigh-in, huge crowd at the weigh-in. today as well for Mick. What are you expecting on Saturday night? I mean, you've been all over the world watching boxing events, but what are you expecting from this event? You've been at the venue as well, so what are you hoping for?
Well, Mick has really improved. He's come on. He was a little tentative when he did his first fight in Madison Square Garden in New York, but he's gained a lot of confidence. Arum has been a really good trainer, and I think you're going to see a career that's going to take off after this fight. He's fighting a tough guy, a lot tougher than the Russian guy who got the decision from him in the Olympics and was supposed to contest, but then got hurt. So I'm very high on Mick, and that's one of the reasons I came over to, in effect, watch his fight, which will be shown in America in the afternoon, which,
Perfect Saturday afternoon viewing.
Yeah, well, we used to do, I remember years in the 70s and 80s, we used to do a lot of our fights in Europe in the evening and had it shown in the United States in the afternoon.
I wouldn't mind a Saturday afternoon show. It's quite good.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, definitely. I asked Mick this question as well. Sometimes when you see somebody with Mick's amateur pedigree, they 10, 11, 12 fights into their pro career, they're already in that world title mix or already got themselves into the mandatory position or whatnot. How far is Mick away from that mandatory shot or world title shot?
Well, you talk about title shots, and we at Top Rank pride ourselves on bringing a fighter along and not putting him in a title situation until we feel that he's capable of winning the title. And Mick has developed slower than, say, Shakur Stevenson, who was in that same weight class at the Olympics. Shakur has come on a lot quicker, so Shakur will fight for a title quicker. Mick will fight for a title probably sometime later next year. There's no rush. I mean, I'm not going to put a kid like Mick in a title fight where I don't think he has a good shot to win.
He said he would love to win the world title at Madison Square Garden. Can you pull that off for him?
Well, he's very popular in the Garden. We have a lot of
the big arena.
In the big arena, we have a lot of Irishmen that will fill the arena, particularly if the event's around St. Patrick's Day,
Definitely.
Which is huge in New York. So we'll see. But again, one step at a time. I'm not going to move him into a title fight because he wants the title fight. I'm going to move him into a title fight when our matchmakers feel that he is going to have a great chance to win.
I will go back to the Russian kid, Vladimir Nikitin. Has that ship sailed for Mick, do you believe? Is that now water under the bridge? I know he would like to avenge that sort of loss.
Nikitin was training in California with Igor Klimas' gym, and they sent him back to Russia to get his bicep operation. And I don't know when he'll be able to fight again. I don't know whether he'll decide that he wants to fight anymore. So I'll just take it one step at a time.
I've got to ask, I'll put you on the spot here as the promoter. When can we see Terence Crawford in amongst these other world champions? I know that PBC holds the other ones when you have Terence Crawford. It seems like they're disrespecting Crawford because at the Pacquiao-Thurman fight they had the banners with all the welterweight champions, but they didn't include Crawford. Crawford.
What does that tell you? It tells you that they realize that Crawford is better than all of them, because if Crawford was just another welterweight champion, they would have put his picture up, right?
Yeah.
But they were sending a message, hey, our guys are not interested in fighting him because he'll beat all of the others.
I've seen that as well, that the PBC don't recognise the WBO as a governing body anymore, the world title. They don't recognise that title anymore. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, because they couldn't push the WBO around, so they, turned and said, we're not playing anymore. It's ridiculous to say you're not going to recognize another organization when your fighters have opportunities to win titles in those organizations. But the PBC has now established a precedent where if one of these other organizations does something to displease them, they're going to not recognize that organization. And at the end of the day, what they're doing is that these other organizations and people in boxing aren't going to recognize the PBC.
Have you spoke to Al reference in the PBC reference of obviously a unification fight with Terence? I mean, the fans are screaming for it.
Well, yeah. Well, one step at a time. We hope in February to have a major heavyweight fight with
Tyson, which is good.
Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, and we met with Heyman on that fight, and we raised the issue of Spence fighting Crawford, and I'll promise that after Spence's next fight, he's going to sit down with us, and hopefully we'll work out that fight. We have the roadmap now with Wilder and Fury. No reason why we couldn't do Crawford and Spence, and particularly when both fighters want that fight.
Yeah.
I'm not particularly interested in fighting Porter or Garcia or Thurman. I don't
think the fans are either.
No, I think they're sort of not elite. But Spence, without a doubt, is elite, as is Crawford, and people would love to see them fight, and maybe once, twice, or even 3 times.
You mentioned Wilder versus Fury, and I'm glad you did. Is there any sort of like venue and dates update on that fight yet?
Venue on what?
And like where the fight's going to be. Some people are saying Vegas, some people are saying New York, and all that sort of stuff.
It'll be in Vegas.
In Vegas.
Particularly if what looks to be the case, we can do the fight on September 14th. But again, that announcements will be made. We're reaching out to Tyson Fury to see if he'd be ready. We have the opponent selected, and so we're just about ready to go. There'll be an announcement shortly.
Good stuff. And just reference the rematch with Wilder and Tyson. Obviously, you believe Tyson won the first fight. Do you think he's going to win more convincingly this second time round?
I don't know. I think so. I think there was a little trepidation on Tyson's part when he fought Wilder because he really had been away and he hadn't had really difficult matches, 2 matches before that fight. I think now he feels confident within himself, and a confident Tyson Fury can beat the world, Nobody can beat Tyson when Tyson is feeling confident in himself.
You said it, Bob, and you're the man that knows. What was MTK's media guy here? Sheldon, have I missed anything?
Frampton next week.
Frampton next week, there we go. See, that's what you always carry a good man on. Frampton next week. What's the thoughts on Frampton against Dominguez?
Well, I think Frampton has a real good shot, and I think we're dedicated to getting Frampton a title shot, whether it's at 126 or 130 will be determined. We have 2 130-pound champions, and so we'll see. But Frampton is a really good fighter. I thought he looked awful when he fought what's his name, Warrington, Josh Warrington. But that could be because he didn't really think that Warrington would give him a battle. But Warrington clearly beat him, but Frampton is a really good fighter. He's very popular in the United States. So I'm looking forward to next Saturday, August the 10th in Philadelphia.
Yep. Oscar Valdez has said that he would stick around at featherweight only for Carl Frampton, I believe it was Was it? Warrington.
I think Valdez told us, his management told us, that he is giving up the 126-pound title. He's going to fight at 130, and Herring is the WBO champion, and he has a mandatory with one of Oscar De La Hoya's fighters this November, and Burchell, who's the WBC champion at 130, is available, so Oscar may end up fighting him.
Well, there we have it. Well, we won't keep much of your time, but again, thank you for doing this for IFL TV, and we'll see you tomorrow at fight
I'm
night.
excited for tomorrow night.
I think we all are.
Yeah, I mean, that crowd is going to be sensational. Outdoor venue, I love. The only thing we got to keep away are the showers.
Well, it's the Irish weather, man. It could be snowing tomorrow.
It's
We don't know.
anybody's weather. I remember when Quigg was over in L.A.,
yeah.
where it hardly ever rains, to fight Oscar Valdez, and the fight went on in a rainstorm.
Well, you got your rain jacket with you while you're here?
No, unfortunately, I didn't, because I don't want to jinx anything. So I came without a rain jacket, and hopefully the gods will be willing and there won't be any rain on Saturday night.
Well, me and Sheldon, we've been here since Wednesday, and I don't think it's rained yet. So
So unfortunately, the laws of average are not really that good for us.
definitely not. But we'll keep our fingers and toes crossed. Let's hope it doesn't rain, because I've
Well,
been up at the venue and it looks
It's
brilliant.
something that neither of us have anything to do with.
Nope. But we, like you say, we could pray. Bob, thank you so much for doing this for IFL TV, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.